I'm Dr. Vishal, and I've come to believe that people read far more books in their imagination than they actually end up reading. And for somebody whose job requirement is staying up to date with all the medical treatments and protocols, basically reading voraciously, I would still say that my reading wish list is far longer than what I can finish under any reasonable stretch of time. So if you're somebody who also wishes to read a lot but cannot read, or has practically stopped reading, has lost interest in reading, or just downright hates reading and doesn't understand why everybody else is so gaga over reading as an activity, then this video is for you, where I can share some insights and experiences on how you can make reading enjoyable again. And if it is something that you've been pondering upon, you wanted to start, then perhaps this video will be a good motivation, a good starting point to get into that hobby and activity. So I personally have been guilty of all of these mistakes and have seen a varying graph in my interest about reading. So sometimes I used to hate reading, but then after following some tips, tricks, some changes, I started reading again, and then some new problems came up, and then you have to wrap yourself around them. So the first thing that I believe people do wrong is that they try to read a book cover to cover. Now this is something which is drilled into our head, that books are something which is sacrosanct, and if you start a book you have to finish, and this might be a hindrance when it comes to enjoying your activity as a casual reader or even as a serious reader. So in medical college, in school, you're always hammered that you have to know each and every page and you have to read it so many times, and after a point it becomes a chore, it becomes a boring activity, and this also translates into you not enjoying reading overall. You might pick up a book and you hate it, but you have to finish it because that is how you've been taught. So if you can stop having this mindset of reading a book cover to cover, then perhaps you can rekindle, you can restart your hobby, your passion of reading, and pick up books. If you like them, you read them. If you don't like them, you can toss it away, give it to somebody, and start afresh with a brand new book. So don't take books far too seriously or more seriously than they are supposed to be taken. Treat them like TV shows or movies, which if you like them, you continue with them, or else you just move on to a better one. So the second thing that I believe really comes in the way of you enjoying your passion or hobby of reading is to read books which have been recommended by others. So generally we get our book recommendations from the internet. We have Goodreads, and there are a lot of other apps and websites and blogs which tell you about a different set of popular books. Sometimes we get our book recommendations from our friends, sometimes we get them from the crossword store or the nearest bookstore which you might have, which have a ranking of different books of different categories, and you like some title, you pick up some book, but you don't really enjoy reading them because it may not be as per your liking. However, what it can do is discourage you from reading altogether. So my advice would be to not just pick up book which has been generally recommended, and if you really want to decide whether you want to read a book or not, you can go and read a summary of the book online. So most of the books, thankfully there are people who write summaries of practically any book that you can think of, and you can get a gist of what the book is all about. Once you've read the summary, once you've heard a podcast or maybe seen a video about this book, and if you're really curious about the finer details of whatever is there inside, and perhaps you think that there is something more that you can discover or find in that book, then you know what you're getting into, and your reading experience of that book can become much more enjoyable. So basically, don't force yourself to read a book just because somebody else has recommended it to you. The third thing which really made me fall in love with books all over again was reading with intention. So generally what we do is that we read to forget. We read something, we enjoy it, and then after some time we forget it. Maybe we remember a couple of passages or one or two ideas, but we don't remember all the juicy details of any particular book, and this is because we read without intention. We read to forget. So it would be great if you read with an intention. For example, you can read with an intention of writing a book summary, you can write a detailed summary, you can write a short summary. Perhaps you can read a book with the intention of writing a talk about it. You want to talk to your friends, or maybe you want to hold a talk at some club. That is why you're reading a book. Perhaps you can read a book to make a YouTube video about. You can read a book to write a blog post about it. Maybe you want to read a book and write a script about it and come up with some articles, or maybe you want to teach somebody, you want to educate somebody. So always reading with an intention makes your process of reading much more enjoyable. You are more likely to take note, underline things, keep them in mind, have a gist ready. It makes the process a little more active. It gives you a goal, a direction, a reason for you to read the book, which in my opinion is very important, and we often forget that. The next hurdle that comes in the way of reading is that you don't end up prioritizing reading. Now this is a cliche. Everybody says that you should prioritize things which are important, but the reality is that your reading time is competing with your YouTube time, your TikTok time, your Instagram time, your eating time, your sleeping time, your working time, and our day is divided into so many other things which are competing for the same 24 hours which you have in hand. And if reading is not a priority, then there are very high chances that it will never end up happening. So one way to overcome this is to make reading, associate reading with something that you do every day. So this is in the habit circle called as developing a habit by association. For example, you can fix a time when you would like to read. You can read before sleeping, you can read early morning in the waking. Fix a time when you would only dedicate yourself to reading. There would be no phone around, there would be no distraction, no notifications, no checking emails, Instagram, TikTok. Now that time of the day could be any time. It could be morning when you are fresh up with a cup of coffee. Instead of newspaper, you can read a few pages of the book that you always wanted to. Maybe before sleeping, reading would be a nice activity to unwind. Sometimes in the day, if you have time, maybe when you're having lunch, you can maybe open a book, read a couple of few pages, earmark them, and you wait for the next day to come. So the idea is that if you associate your reading with some other usual everyday activity, then you will not need to put extra time and effort in scheduling your reading time. So in this way, the reading becomes associated with something which you already do, and you end up doing it more often. The next problem that I observed was that I was reading every book in the same way. I was reading every book word to word, waiting for ideas to form in my head, going down the rabbit hole of imagination, vocalizing, sub-vocalizing everything. And in my opinion, it is not such a bad thing. The most conventional wisdom which you will receive when you listen to other videos or people talking about how to read fast is to suppress your sub-vocalization. Sub-vocalization basically means vocalizing every word which you read in your head, and it slows the process of reading. However, I found that stopping this it makes the reading less interesting, and I cannot understand things. I would like to take my time to understand things. However, not every book is worthy enough of this time and effort of understanding, which essentially means there's no point in reading every book the same way. There are some books which can be quickly skimmed upon, and then there are some books like, for example, Robert Greene's Laws of Human Nature. It's a big fat book, but the ideas and the concepts in the book are so in-depth, so valuable that you want to read, stop, reflect, go down the rabbit hole of imagination, form your own ideas and concepts, and then move forward. So there are very high chances that you might pick up a valuable book like this after doing your research about do you really want to read it, and read it throughout the year slowly as and when you feel the need. And on the side, you can also read some quick read books, skim them over. The idea is that you have to understand which book needs to be read slowly and absorbed, and the ones which need to be skimmed upon. Lastly, in today's time and age, you have to realize that reading a book the conventional way may not be the best or the only method of reading a book. When we say we like reading or we want to read a book, we essentially mean picking up a book from a bookstore and opening and reading it. And I would say that is by far the most enjoyable way of reading it. However, it may not be the most efficient way of reading a book, because sometimes you cannot carry multiple books with you. Sometimes you don't really want to read. Maybe you are traveling, you have motion sickness, your reading time cannot happen to be your traveling time as well. Which brings me to the concept of reading the old-fashioned way versus the new ways. So the new ways of reading books are reading via listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, making use of apps which summarize books. There are apps which summarize books so that you can understand everything in 15 seconds, 15 minutes, 6 lines, and there are so many other ways. The point is that reading in today's day and time is no longer restricted to opening a book and reading page to page. If you don't want to really read a book, you can perhaps plug your earphones on and a book will be read to you in an audio format. It would be read to you faster if you're somebody who understands things by listening to them. You can also have your books summarized to you and have it delivered via your email or your app as a notification. So in today's day and time, you have to realize that if you really want to enjoy a book, you need not be intimidated by the big fat visual appearance of the book, but you have many other ways in which reading, I would say, can be simplified, and it becomes much easier to absorb all that you always wanted to from your favorite books. So I hope by the end of this video now you have realized that reading is not merely just opening a book and getting bored, but there are so many different ways that all that information can go inside your brain, and there are so many methods to choose from. So let me know if you really like this video, if this video helped you in rekindling your habit of reading, if rethinking your plans of finishing your reading wish list. If there's anything else that you would like to know, then please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to know your thoughts and suggestions about this video. If it is helpful, share it with others, and let us stay in touch on this channel. Subscribe, press the bell icon, and very soon I will see you in another video.